This is your before and after story. Prepare for an incredible career in nursing. At Southeastern College, experience expert hands-on training. Learn real-world skills in our professional lab and simulated settings. And train for opportunities as a practical nurse, registered nurse, or career advancement with our RN to BSN program. At Southeastern College, your future is bright. Visit sec.edu to get started.
So kick back and listen, it'll make your grin. Every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Yeah.
Well, the road goes ever on, right? Wednesday night, and on this stretch of the path, we stop by the Watchtower, where the fires still burn and the letters keep coming in. Too many for me to read all of them this week, so sorry about that. But welcome, Pilgrim's Great Chronicles, Robert Clark, your host, to this midweek tavern talk, right? And tonight we crack open the dispatches from the road, questions, comments, challenges, and curiosities sent in by you, the watchers, the wanderers, fellow pilgrims, and the wide-eyed diggers of lost truth. And we don't shy away from the strange or controversial here, right? Whether it's gravity debates, Nephilim bones, Tartarian towers, or prophetic puzzles, we tackle your thoughts with grit, good faith, and the occasional goblet of dry humor. So pull up a stool, stoke the fire, and let's read what the ravens have brought in from you all. This is Wednesday night, Watchtower, and the road goes ever on. So folks, let's get started right away because I have a metric crap ton of comments to weed through. We're going to start with Annie, who's made several comments, starting with I'm a Lone Ranger street preacher since 2008. I think that's awesome and very bold because you have to know what you're talking about when you do something like that because typically, when you're street preaching, you're going to get harassed and you're going to get asked a lot of questions. And there's nothing wrong with that. People should ask questions. I think it invites an opportunity to be able to be asked questions. And we need to be prepared as Christian people to answer them, right? So, and hopefully we do that with love and don't get impatient or annoyed or irritated. So good on you, Annie. That's pretty brave. And then she's got 4 comments here, I think. Yep, 4. Donald Trump is the son of perdition summoned up by Aleister Crowley. Well, like I said in my response to you, I think you could be onto something, and I think there's too many criteria that fit to just completely ignore. Really, he is my number 1 draft pick for this position. I'm not saying 100%, but I do believe that the story he was telling about the serpent and biting all along the campaign trail, I think it's that universal law that all the heavenly beings have to subscribe to, which is you have to announce what you're doing in advance. And they just make it look like entertainment or something silly or whatever, whereas God openly tells you through prophets. But in this case, I think he was trying to tell you you're going to get bit at the end of all this. So I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think myself or many others who feel this way about a Hegelian dialect going on here, that the Democrats and Republicans and Trump, they're not enemies. They're all working together to bring about their Novus Ordo Seclorum. It's all over your money. Just check your dollar bill out. And the earth is reserved for fire. I agree, Annie. There's not going to be another flood. We are promised that. We see the rainbow, and fire is coming. Gog and Magog will be destroyed by fire. Lucifer and all the armies he brings against the camp of the saints will be destroyed by fire after a little season. Which seems to imply a short amount of time, right? That's what it seems to be indicating to me. It's just one more reason not to believe in the little season theory. And another one brought to us by Annie, Damascus is still a city. In Isaiah 17:1, there's a prophecy regarding Damascus, and it says, Damascus will cease to be a city and will become a heap of ruins. So far as I know, it's still standing, still a city, and still on the map, and still functioning as a city. So, as so many SLS folks are fond of saying, God is not a liar, and Damascus is still a city. So, there you go. And they like to use that term because, as JT from JT's Mixtape pointed out in his What Generation Are We In? He offers no other possibility. Even though I've on a couple of different videos explained the Greek language being used there, doesn't have to mean exactly what he's saying. And in fact, most scholars don't agree with his interpretation of it. There's a lot of preterists who do, but they're in the minority. A small minority. And there's a good reason for that. And it's because of things like Damascus still being a city, Mount Olivet not being split in half in a wide valley, and every living thing in the sea dying. And in another response coming up that I'll read, somebody brought up the idea that, well, Jesus could restore the fish during the millennial reign. There'd still be signs of dead fish, carcasses, all manner of things. That there would be evidence that every living thing in the sea died. Might have been mentioned sometime in history also, but I forget. As a part of that theory, the only history that can be trusted is something that agrees with the little season. Everything else is fake, replaced, and basically it's an unfalsifiable theory, which ought to give you red flags. So moving on, but thank you, Annie. That was a great thing to point out, and I appreciate it. And then Ivan, another fun coincidence for Revelation 9:11, Abaddon. Yes. I'm thinking I might have read some of these last week because I remember possibly reading that. But anyway, yes, I'm well aware of the Abaddon reference and the 66th floor of the tower and Jared Kushner's address. In fact, we covered that in one of our videos in some detail, actually. And then there's more little Satan's Little Season stuff if you want to look into it. It's an exchange between Heat Deep and I. But he says, where is the evidence you say in the writings? Asking this question, you fail to understand the basic point of Satan's little season. If we are not in this time and just try to understand why God would release Satan, and if all the evidence of 1,000 years were hidden or not, hidden from this generation born into that time, what effect would it have on testing their faith? What I think is logical is all the historical evidence in the Vatican in private connections. Okay, so that was a little bit jumbled, his response, but I think I knew what he meant. So my response was, just making sure I'm understanding you right. Are you saying that the 1,000-year reign did happen, but all the evidence of it was hidden, like early writings of historical traces, and that this is part of God's test of faith during Satan's little season? If that's what you meant, here's my response. Even if someone could hide certain documents or rewrite historical timelines, they can't hide what's supposed to happen visibly and worldwide according to Scripture. The Bible doesn't just give us vague spiritual metaphors, it gives concrete signs that cannot be brushed away or tucked into a Vatican vault. For example, the Mount of Olives, which I bring up constantly because it's a huge sign, is not split in two with a massive valley running through it, which is spoken of in Zechariah 14:4. Damascus is still a city, Isaiah 17:1. Every living creature in the sea has not died, Revelation 16:3, and all the nations, so far as we know, have not come up to Jerusalem to worship the King year after year after year, forever afterwards. They should still be there. They shouldn't have ran off to the North Pole. The camp of the saints shouldn't be hidden underground. It shouldn't be up in the air floating in an invisible sky city to descend later after Revelation chapter 20. They should all be in Jerusalem with sacrifices going on in memorandum of what Jesus did for us on the throne of David in Jerusalem, and that is not happening. And so far as I know, has never happened in history. And those things are not hidden. They just haven't happened. And so the issue isn't about whether someone buried the paperwork. It's that the prophetic mile markers described in God's word simply haven't shown up. For that and many other reasons, I believe the 1,000-year reign is still ahead and not behind, and we have absolutely not one shred of history anywhere, written or recorded, of a time period roughly 1,000 years long that was primarily known, or its primary characteristic, one of peace throughout the world, even amongst the animals. Is it possible that all the history of that could have been erased for whatever strange reason? Sure, but it seems highly unlikely, and I just don't think there's evidence of that kind of a cover-up going on, especially when so much of the evidence presented for things like the architecture have weird things going on, as I've mentioned in my video, that don't seem Christ-like. The gargoyles, the statues, the use of Masonic and Luciferian measurements and alignment with planets and stars. It just, anyway. He writes another response. I will respond to that in writing later because we have a lot to go over. Black Crust. New commenter, so welcome aboard, says, I have kids and a long criminal record, but I'm with y'all in spirit and solidarity. Don't give up. We are winning. Well, you know what? Good for you. Never give up. The Lord is always with you, especially when you have that kind of heart and spirit. So I think that's awesome, and it means a lot. Even if you are locked up currently, you're always welcome at the end when you hit the road again and you're out there walking the road that goes ever on. I'll walk with you and sit and chat with you at the end. And then thank you from Annie. You are welcome. And that must be in response to probably me using her info on Damascus. Or maybe just she enjoyed the show. The Ring of Fire is waking up. And then Ivan, great to hear from you. Would be nice to follow along a wee presentation or slideshow, or even sharing the article as a video. Regardless, I'll keep tuning in. God bless you. Well, I am trying to find the time to do that more, honestly. The interview that I just did with John Parsons is on the Rumble channel that I included in the link to our most recent Monday night show. I can't, through my RSS feed, the video files are too long to upload through Spreaker and some other services. So I have to send audio there. But I will start loading what videos I do have up to Rumble. And I might even do some special things on Rumble because I can do them there without having to worry about the kind of strikes I get and censorship with YouTube. Let's see here. And then we have Junebug. I want to believe in Flat Earth so bad. I really do. It's such a cool concept. I do have one question. In the Book of Enoch, it tells us that the sun goes underneath the earth and through portals. But every time I see a picture, such as the one above it, usually shows the sun and the moon circulating above the earth. How do you guys explain that? Well, here's my response. You're not alone. A lot of us got here the same way, wanting to believe but needing real answers. I didn't want to believe at first, so I went about looking into it to disprove what I had heard at first, but could not genuinely do so. So let's break down your question. The Book of Enoch absolutely talks about the sun and moon entering and exiting through portals at the ends of the earth. It also mentions the sun going under the earth, but we need to remember that phrase, not like our modern day language, that phrase is from the perspective of someone on the surface watching it disappear. It doesn't mean it drops through the crust into the globe's core. In ancient Hebrew cosmology, which Enoch would have followed, under just simply meant beneath the visible plane beyond the horizon, not literally inside a ball. The images people share with the sun and the moon above are just simply circular path diagrams that show the figure eight during the seasons and the path around the planet. And they don't show the full mechanics of the portals, which I believe are real, but many flat earthers agree the sun and moon go in circuits, sometimes above the visible dome, sometimes disappearing through a portal or circuit path that may curve downward or vanish from view entirely, like a train going into a tunnel around a mountain. So you're right to notice the tension, but it's not a contradiction. It's just a simplification of for visualization. Wow. Man, some words just want to make your tongue leap out of your mouth and not work. So Enoch 72 even lays out 365 segments of the sun's journey with portals on both the east and west sides, and that's not globe language. It's flat, enclosed cosmology. So the takeaway, Enoch supports a flat, enclosed Earth. The underlanguage is just observation, not spherical. The sun and the moon have a path above and through portals beyond. But stick with the curiosity. That's how most of us got here. So I hope that answered your question. And Ivan, absolutely addicted to the intro-outro song. I wonder where I can find this music. Is this something you are involved in producing, Robert? Love the mix of Celtic and Middle Earth vibes. Back in my late teens, I used to listen to a Christian band called As I Lay Dying. I've listened to them too, Ivan. And just turned on a song called Through Struggle. I always found it a bit weird that Christian music can sound like that, but for some reason, I really liked it back then. I just did a quick research on them, and it looks like the main controversy surrounding As I Lay Dying came in 2013 when the band's lead vocalist, Tim Lambesis, was arrested for attempting to hire someone to kill his wife. Now, this shocking event led to the band's temporary disbandment. He later pleaded guilty to the charges and was sentenced to 6 years in prison, although he was released after serving about half of his sentence. I can't say I blame the man. Yes. Sometimes spouses are difficult to deal with, but killing them isn't a good idea. And I digress, right? Time to start this interview. Should be a good one. I enjoyed it. I really like John, and I'm hoping we can work out an arrangement for us to be on a regular slot on his radio show so that people would be able to hear this podcast actually on one of the radio slots on his show at some different time of the week. That'd be awesome. I would love that. Rebecca, welcome back. And I'm sorry that you, it says here that you're breaking up really bad. You must be hitting a nerve. And then she said, I think it was my phone. It probably was just your phone. I didn't have any issues that particular night. But I have had issues on other nights when I covered a certain topic about the Chabad houses. I found that very interesting. All right. And then Easy to Hate says on the Tartarian video, which I get a lot of hate mail for whatever reason, dude acts like he can believe what it says happened. A sentence that doesn't seem to make much sense to me, but... And then laughy face. If it was the millennium reign of Christ and the devil was set free to deceive the nations, then lying and hiding the millennium reign of Christ is exactly what he would do. See how quickly you believe it didn't happen? Just because you read something that said it was the opposite, you think it has to be true. Well, I'm just reading scripture, and Mount Olivet is not split in half and not a wide valley. So I'll go by that and not what you're saying. May God be true and every man a liar. I don't know what else to say. And besides, the idea that that is the only sole motivation for covering up some of these things, as if there could be not possibly be any other good reason, I think is egotistical and absurd. All right, so Ivan, Deadly, found the song and downloaded. Oh, cool. So you found the video I made for Lantern of Grey. Very cool, and I plan to make one for the outro song also. But I did not produce them. The Lantern of Grey song, very early on, was sent in on maybe after when I first started the podcast, one of the first 3 shows, I got an email from a couple that did that song and the outro. It's just, I didn't want to use the other song at first because I liked the Lantern of Grey the best. But then I thought, well, why not just use 2 different songs? So I started doing that and just making more different intro, outro songs available. And let's see, American's Grandson. Hope this isn't all code for the complexion supremacist. I have no idea what that means, but I guess I will look that up. Sorry, America's Grandson. I want to thank you for tuning in and listening. And I hope you'll keep tuning in, but I don't understand your comment. But I will educate myself, and I will find out what you meant and get down to business with that. Okay, so I'm going to move on to a little bit of this exchange that I had. I was telling you about at the beginning of the show regarding gravity and heliocentrism and biblical cosmology. I commented on a post on X that was made by Flat Earth Library, and he basically posted a meme, and it says on the bottom it says the Great Gravity Hoax. At the top it says, if gravity pulls tons of water to the ground, why doesn't it pull the rest of the things? And so I read through a whole bunch of the different arguments, and my response to the vast majority of the arguments being offered by the heliocentric side was this. Man, I have to say these heliocentric arguments are pretty piss poor. I'm not saying this post is great, and it clearly doesn't offer arguments to substantiate the claim, but I've not seen one decent heliocentric response yet. Just factory conditioning from years of brainwashing, psyop, and no thinking it through critically. An explanation utilizing the theory of gravity needs to also include why it is that gravitational equations break down on large scale, causing scientists to have to posit a placeholder like mysterious dark matter in order for it to work, the theory. And so a gentleman named Elliot Nace responded by saying, well, do you have an alternative explanation as to why things fall down? And now I know why he worded it that way, because I've dealt with this many, many times, and so I knew how to respond, because I've done this countless times, trying to explain to people who don't agree with me about the earth being flat or whatever. And I get it. I didn't believe it at first either. And I'm not asking you to believe it. It's just I now hold that belief as a better argument than what we're being told regarding heliocentrism. And I have good reasons why. I have made videos why, and I plan to probably make another one because more information has come out and I've thought of other things. But here was my response. I said, why, yes, I do. And so what you're basically asking is this. Why do things fall down if there's no gravity? Well, first off, things do fall. I'm not denying that. But just because an apple drops off a tree doesn't mean that Sir Isaac figured out the secrets of the universe by watching fruit hit dirt. The real reason isn't what happens, it's why it happens. And I don't think an invisible force that allegedly bends space-time while deciding how hard to pull on butterflies versus boulders is the best explanation on offer. You want an alternative? Here it is, density and buoyancy. It's not mystical, it's not theoretical, it's just simple physics. If something is denser than the medium it's in, it goes down. If it's less dense, it goes up. A rock sinks in water, a helium balloon rises in the air. No space-time bending required. We don't need gravity to explain that. We just need density differences and a stable vertical orientation, like what we actually experience every day. But I get it. People want to know why it always goes down. Why not sideways? Why not up? Well, why would it? We live in a world with a fixed foundation beneath us, right? Down is just toward the earth and everything is oriented around that. It's like asking why rain falls on your head and not sideways into your ear. It's just how the system works from top to bottom. Heavier things, or more dense things, settle downward through lighter mediums. And now, here's where gravity starts to sound like a sci-fi supervillain. We are told it, 1, pulls you down with the perfect amount of force, while, 2, holds down trillions of tons of water to a spinning ball Earth, but lets you lift your foot without dying of compression, and also somehow lets insects fly and helium float because it just knows how to do it. Isn't that convenient? I mean, think about it. We're supposedly spinning at over 1,000 miles per hour at the equator. Have you ever ridden a tilt-a-whirl? Try pouring a glass of water on one and see what happens. But here we are, not flying off, oceans not sloshing into the atmosphere, is calmly stuck to the ball because gravity's got it all under control. Magically. Really. And if gravity is strong enough to keep entire oceans glued to the side of a spinning globe, how are we not crushed flat? I mean, seriously, the force required to keep that much water from flying into space when you're spinning at 1,000 miles per hour should pin you to the ground like a pressurized meat pancake. Yet here we are, jumping, jogging, and lifting boxes like gravity's just gently tapping us on the shoulder. Now, most would say, well, it pulls everything according to its mass. Well, okay, great. So why does a bowling ball weigh more than a beach ball? Because it has more mass. And how do we know it has more mass? Well, it weighs more. Well, see, that's what I call a circular explanation, where the answer is just the question wearing a fake mustache. So no, I don't think gravity is the magic glue holding the universe together. I think it's a convenient plug-in to keep the globe model afloat, pun intended. What we actually observe is density, buoyancy, and consistent orientation toward the Earth. No need for invisible, all-powerful, self-adjusting forces that conveniently can't be directly tested or demonstrated. And the best part? I don't need to pretend I understand how space-time curves around a bowling ball to explain why my coffee mug just fell off a table. So now you might ask, well, okay, smart guy, if there's no gravity, why does a bowling ball weigh more than a beach ball? Well, I'm glad you asked. Because a bowling ball weighs more because it's denser. That's it. It's made of more tightly packed material, so it pushes harder downward through the medium, which in our case is air. And a scale doesn't measure gravity, it measures how much force is being applied on an object or that an object is exerting as it tries to displace the medium beneath it and settle onto the solid foundation below. In other words, solid foundation would be Earth or something that it is not as dense as, or it's denser than it. So you put a beach ball on a scale, it barely taps it. If you put a bowling ball on a scale, it's like, yep, I'm here to stay. The denser object is going to push harder. That's what we call weight. Not because some invisible force is customizing its pull for every object, but because dense things sink just like they do in water. No space-time bending, no magic math, just common sense and observable physics. Try it at home. No PhD required. Now, of course, he responded. And I would too. If I were him, I would have responded. So he said, okay, you said a scale doesn't measure gravity. It measures how much force an object exerts as it tries to displace the medium beneath it. Why is it exerting a force? You seem to skip over that part. You just seem to be describing gravity without using the word. And so I replied, well, let's see, where did I... Huh. I think my reply got jumbled here. Hold on. You said why is it exerting a force? You seem to skip over that part. Where's my response? Oh, here it is. Okay. I said, great question, and I didn't skip it. I just don't dress it up with unproven labels like gravity. An object exerts a force because it has mass and is denser than the medium below it. That is basic physical behavior observable without invoking an unseen force pulling things to the center of a spinning ball. If I hold a rock in the air and let it go, it falls not because of magical gravity, but because the rock is denser than the air around it. If I drop a helium balloon, it rises because it's less dense than the surrounding atmosphere. What a scale actually measures is pressure, the force an object applies as it is displacing the medium around it, in this case air, downward into the medium it's resting on due to its density and how it interacts with whatever is beneath it, whether it's air, water, a table, etc. That force isn't caused by some unseen warping of space-time. It's simply the resistance of a denser object displacing a less dense one below it until it meets one that isn't. So no, I'm not secretly describing gravity. I'm describing density and buoyancy, which are observable, testable principles. Gravity, on the other hand, requires you to believe in a spinning ball holding trillions of tons of water to its surface, a selective force strong enough to curve oceans yet too weak to stop a butterfly, something you can't see, feel, replicate, or define without circular reasoning. And the bottom line, I'm not skipping anything. I'm just not assuming a theory masquerading as fact. And so he replied, even in your model, something is still keeping the ocean down and helium balloons up. Birds and butterflies are still denser than the air, yet they can fly. What's really the difference? You're still claiming weight as a force, which is exactly the same. And so my reply was this. You're still missing the key distinction, Elliot. I'm not claiming weight as a mystical force acting at a distance. I'm describing what's actually observable, the way objects interact based on relative density and the resistance of the medium that they are in. Helium balloons rise because helium is less dense than the surrounding air. Rocks fall because they are more dense than air. A submarine sinks until water pressure equals its internal density. This is straightforward. There's no need for imaginary fabric curving or mass attracting mass explanations. Now, birds and butterflies, they're not floating. They fly by generating lift through motion and wing shape. That's aerodynamics, not gravity versus density. If they stop moving, they fall because their bodies are still denser than air. They aren't escaping some invisible pull. They're simply displacing air with enough force to temporarily stay aloft. Same with airplanes. Not floating, but flying using designed propulsion and lift. So no, I am not rebranding gravity. I'm rejecting it as unprovable, shape-dependent assumption. There's no measurable force pulling towards a center of mass, only density, buoyancy, and mechanical motion, all fully observable without needing a spinning ball or Newton's magic apple. You're welcome to believe the Earth is clinging oceans to its surface while letting a butterfly defy this alleged pull, but I'll stick with what we can test. That was my reply to that. And let's go back. So, his response. Mass, density, buoyancy, and mechanical motion all exist as well. We still have a force pushing and pulling, and one very specific direction. It's funny that they say that because their guy, one of their guys, Einstein, says that direction is relative, right? And that one of his theories of relativity, anyway. If a baseball is in the air, the density of the air is less than the ball in all directions, yet it goes down. Why is this force directional? So, I said, good follow-up, Elliot. Yes, mass, density, buoyancy, and mechanical motion all exist, but what's missing is the need for a magical pulling force acting from the center of a spinning sphere. The directional behavior you're pointing to, that's simply the result of a consistent pressure and density gradient in the medium, namely air or water. In our model, there is a down, but it's not toward the center of a globe. It's the direction opposite to the density gradient. Everything seeks equilibrium. A denser object in a lighter medium will always move toward the denser region of that medium, just like oil rises in water, or a stone sinks in the air. That's direction, but it's not pull. It's displacement and resistance, which always resolves downward in a contained system. The reason a baseball doesn't move sideways or up in the air is because it's not seeking a less dense medium in those directions. It already exists in one. It sinks down because the resistance below is able to absorb the displacement better than the thinner medium above it. No center of mass pull required. So, you're trying to repackage density into gravity by saying, well, something is pulling it. But I'm saying nothing is pulling. It's the interaction of mass and medium, which has an observable directional bias due to how mediums are layered, denser below, lighter above. It's like pouring sand into water. Does it fall because Earth pulls it, or because sand is denser than water and displaces it downward? Gravity needs math that never gets proven outside of models. Density and buoyancy, you can test them in your kitchen. And did he respond to that one? I'm not seeing his response. Oh, right here. Sorry. Excuse me. Denser below, lighter above. He's quoting me. You're trying to debunk gravity, but you don't even know what weight is and how it's derived. 9.8 meters over s squared is a measurable quantity called g. You can't ignore it. To produce a force like weight, mass must experience acceleration. Weight equals mass times g. All right, well, my response to that was this. Elliot, you're describing gravity theory like it's a settled law of nature, but what you're really doing is defining a force into existence based on the very assumption you're supposed to be proving. You said 9.8 mass over s squared is a measurable quantity called g. You can't ignore. To produce a force like weight, mass must experience acceleration. Weight equals mass times g. Sure, that's how gravity defines itself, but you're treating that formula as evidence when it's actually a model built on the belief that there is a downward force pulling towards the center of a spinning ball. So, let me explain. G is just a measurement of acceleration downward. I agree. We don't deny that things fall. But what causes that acceleration? You say gravity. I say relative density and buoyancy in a medium. You call the result weight equals mass times gravity. Or, I'm sorry, this G force. But that just means things fall because they fall at 9.8. Anyway, your formula there. What you're doing is you're presupposing a downward force to explain a downward acceleration, and that is circular reasoning. Meanwhile, our model observes that in a vacuum chamber, remove the medium, air, and buoyant effects vanish. Denser objects still fall. In fluid tanks or layered mediums, objects find their equilibrium based on density, not mass attracting mass. So there's no need for invisible strings pulling towards a ball's core or bending of space-time. So now ask yourself, why does gravity know to pull oceans down, trillions of tons, but somehow knows to let a butterfly be able to float and flap its wings freely? Why does a helium balloon escape this massive force altogether? And why is there no observable curvature which gravity is supposed to maintain? So I'm not denying that G exists. I'm questioning what actually causes it. Newton guessed and Einstein tried to redefine it, but no one has ever measured gravity as a pulling force from mass itself. It's all inferred. So I guess what I'm saying is let's not confuse the math with the mechanism. And so let's see here. Go back to this post to make sure I'm not missing anything. I don't think I am. Okay, so we got a number of responses here. Another person jumped in here, and I'll just read his response. He says, denser below, that was the other guy. And then he responded by saying, and weight produces a pressure gradient in gases and liquids, which results in a buoyant force, which is equal to the weight of the displaced fluid. Buoyant force equals PVG. So I responded by saying this. Hey, Ruskney, that's the new guy, not Elliot. I appreciate the well thought out replies, but let's unpack what you're actually saying, because you've stepped also into some circular logic without realizing it. You wrote, then he reproduces, I just quoted him with his equation where weight produces a pressure gradient. And I said, this is textbook fluid statics. But again, you're just reciting formulas that assume gravity, or G, is the acting force without questioning where it comes from or why it behaves selectively. You're defining gravity using gravity. You're saying weight, mass times G, causes pressure, which then causes buoyancy. But then you define buoyancy using G again. Buoyant force equals PVG. Density times volume times gravity. So essentially, gravity causes weight, which causes pressure, which causes buoyancy, which is calculated using gravity. That is a tautology. It's like saying water is wet because it's wet. So what is actually observed? Let's go empirical for a second. A helium balloon rises not because it's repelled by gravity, but because it's less dense than the medium it's in. A rock sinks not because gravity pulls harder on it, but because it is denser than air or water and has no equilibrium point. A bowling ball falls faster through water than molasses, not because of changing gravity, but because of fluid resistance and density differentials. So what's really going on? Objects move until they reach their equilibrium point in a medium. This happens with or without invoking invisible mass attract mass forces. Right? We've never seen gravity operate in isolation. No one's ever seen gravity pull something in a vacuum with no medium, no mass interaction, and no container. What do we see? Denser objects fall, lighter ones rise or stay suspended, all dependent on the medium they're in, which means what we call gravity is better explained as objects seek their equilibrium position in a stratified density environment. We're not denying what's observed, we are reinterpreting the mechanism behind it. And what about the inconsistencies? Why is it that why can a butterfly resist G with paper-thin wings? Why do gases and liquids not fly off a spinning globe at 1,000 miles per hour at the equator? Why does gravity know how to hold on to the oceans, to the globe, even though we're spinning like a centrifuge? Yet it allows microscopic dust to float around indefinitely. So this G-force must be intelligent if it can dial in the exact pull needed per object, or perhaps there's a simpler answer, buoyancy and density, with no need for invented forces or curved space-time math metaphors. We're always told to trust the math, but math is only as good as the assumptions baked into the formula. And just because PVG gives you a neat number doesn't mean that G is a literal invisible pulling force. It just means we observe downward acceleration and we interpret it based on the cosmology we already believe. So if you want to continue, I'd be more than happy to explore it further, but let's stick to observation and not just formula parroting. And then one last comment, and we will wrap it up. Because he responds, well, thanks to gravity, all fluids have a pressure gradient, which results in a net upward force on objects because there is more pressure pushing on the bottom surface compared to the top. If the pressure was equal on all sides of an object, net force would be zero, so no upward force. And then he put a meme with this, which I'll handle separately. But let's just deal with his statement first. But his meme says this, how it works. The buoyant force arises because the pressure in a fluid increases with depth. The bottom of a submerged object experiences greater pressure than the top, resulting in a net upward force, which is the buoyant force. So, my response, I appreciate the detailed breakdown, seriously, but let's keep this short and simple so anyone reading along can follow what we're really arguing. You're saying fluids have pressure more at the bottom than the top, so that creates buoyancy and gravity causes that. That sounds reasonable, but here's the thing. Here's the flat earth reply in plain terms. I don't deny pressure differences. Of course there's more pressure lower down in a fluid. We all feel it when we swim. But you're assuming the reason for that is gravity, that this invisible force is pulling everything down. And what I'm just saying is that what if the sorting of objects, heavy things down, light things up, is just based on density, not some magical force pulling oceans and elephants and feathers all at the same time? Right? You drop a rock in water, it sinks. You drop a ping pong ball, it floats. No gravity needed, it's just denser versus less dense. Same reason helium goes up and bricks go down and steam rises off your coffee. Nature sorts itself. There's no force pulling needed. Well, why not gravity? Well, because gravity, as taught, is selective magic. It's strong enough to hold trillions of gallons of ocean water to a spinning ball, but weak enough to let butterflies, birds, and balloons float away. I mean, come on now. And don't even get me started on how that same force supposedly knows exactly how much to pull on different objects so they all fall the same speed. That's a whole separate discussion. And we could go on with experiments, formulas, and pressure math, but let's be honest, most folks won't read that anyway. So I'll just say this. You described what happens, pressure differences, but you skipped over why they happen, and that's what I'm questioning. I say it's density and buoyancy, full stop. No invisible force required. So, anyway, that's pretty much the totality of all of those responses. And if you visit our X channel, you would get a chance to see all that. I've been trying to be consistent, with posting the links and other things of that nature. And I'll continue to try to be consistent with that because, at some point, not only are we going to have a new Rumble channel, but I also plan to add a Facebook channel, and my wife wants me to start working on more merchandise besides just the shirts and hats that say Pilgrim's Great Chronicles. She wants funny stuff and interesting stuff. So I'll take time to work on that as well, even though I really don't have a whole lot of free time, and I spend my free time, sharing your emails, covering stories on our top 3 stories on Friday, and then researching all week to write up my stories for Monday, or interviewing. I guess I need to spend more time trying to get people on the show or being on other people's shows. I just don't have the time for the outreach, but I'll try harder, because I want to give you guys good stuff, including interviews. So, so the fire burns low, the letters are all red, and the road calls once more, right? If you do have a question or a theory or a story that belongs in the Chronicles, please send it our way. The Watchtower Lantern stays lit at pilgrimsgray@gmail.com. And that's gray with a Grey, not AY. And we just might read your dispatch on the next Wednesday night stop. And if you want to walk further with us, well, you can go to any streaming platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And now you can watch full episodes, music, and more on Rumble and YouTube both. I probably won't post as much to Rumble yet, but most of what I do post there will most likely be Monday's videos. And I might post up some past videos, and maybe what I can do is look up images that'll help support what we're talking about. But that'll be pretty time consuming, so it may be a while before I get all that up. And you can find our relics and maps and merchandise at pilgrimsgray.etsy.com. And of course, our X or Twitter can be found at @RLClark16. So come visit any one of those pages anytime and drop us a line. New shows are every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, typically at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, or as close to that as possible. Please subscribe, share, and help us light more lanterns in the dark to walk with us, right? And until next time, stay sharp, stay grounded, and remember, the road goes ever on, but you don't have to walk it alone. Keep that lantern lit, keep it high, and good night from the Watchtower, and Godspeed to all of you.
It's time for listener emails, comments, and stuff they send in. So kick back and listen, it'll make you grin. Every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, yeah. Central Standard Time, yeah. Central Standard Time, yeah. It's time for listener emails, comments, and stuff they send in.